That's how we're starting the show. One sip of coffee left. That's great. We got to do... That's unacceptable. No way. Did I really drink that much? Just sat down 3 minutes ago. 3 minutes ago, we sit down. We fire up the monitors, light up the mic, get the camera rolling. I look over. I got one sip left. Did I really drink that much? Well, we got to get another cup of coffee, obviously, man. Once the cold open teaser ends, let's fill that. What's up, guys? Welcome to Amped Up with BC, your weekend wrap-up edition. All the latest from the pro wrestling world that we have yet to discuss on the channel. We will be talking about it in this very upload. There's a lot to go over, short amount of time to do such. So I'll try to fit all of these stories in within about an hour-ish, give or take a minute or two. So sit back, max, relax, grab your bevies, get jacked while BC drops the facts. We'll start with Vinnie Mac. That's right, Vince McMahon. I know, I can already hear all the moans in the wrestling world. We gotta talk about Vince. But we do, because there's a big report that came out about Vince's return to pro wrestling. And this is interesting because just last week we talked about it on this channel. And when we talked about it, a lot of people didn't want to talk about it. A lot of individuals turned a blind eye, earmuffs, la 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 la. And I understand. But with this latest report, there is no turning a blind eye. There is no earmuffs. Because this report is coming out of the general feeling of those within the walls of WWE. And this report is very telling. I'll tell you what it is, and I'll tell you how BC sees this playing out, and where and how I see Vince coming back. And I'm pretty sure this is what is going to happen. So we'll talk about it. We're also going to talk Liv Morgan, a huge update on her injury from this past Monday night on Raw. A crucial, heartbreaking injury, especially with the momentum that Liv Morgan has had in the past several months especially. She started Raw on Monday. That is a coveted position to be in. A huge responsibility to give somebody the first segment of the night. It is just as important as the main event. I say that all the time because it carries so much weight. And Io and Liv started Monday Night Raw and setting up a world title match between the two. And of course, Morgan has already began the setup to her big tag title match with the Bella Twins at Evolution. So much. Liv Morgan had so much going for her, so much momentum, and just blink of an eye, snap of a finger, that injury just kind of put everything on the shelf. Now, everybody was hoping for the best of updates, right? The best case scenario is it's not too severe, and she'll actually be back in 4 to 6 weeks, because that is possible. I've seen many dislocations in athletes where they're back in 4 to 6 weeks, month to a month and a half. That was the best case scenario. The worst case is that it is severe and that she will maybe even need surgery, because then we're talking 6 to 8 months, not weeks. So now you're no longer talking Evolution Night of Champions missing. You're talking about missing SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and if that's the case, they're most likely going to hold her off till 2026 Royal Rumble. Well, we have the update. And what I can tell you in this cold open teaser, if you're a Liv Morgan supporter, or Liv Morgan herself, as she knows by now, it's not good. The update. We'll talk about it and what it means going forward and all the plans that now have to be switched up, especially Evolution. I got all the numbers for this week for all the shows, guys. Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, there's an asterisk, I'll explain. But I have all the numbers. Raw sticks out the most. It's the post Money in the Bank edition, because Netflix is always 7 days behind, because Netflix counts all 7 days. So they're always a week behind. So the numbers that we have for Raw is for the post Money in the Bank edition, which was Jason Uso, Jason Yeaterman dropping his title to Gunther. This number tells a surprising story. We'll talk all about it. Speaking of NXT and AEW, I have my thoughts on their shows this week. It's not going to be a full review top to bottom, but I will talk about the biggest talking point from NXT, which I think you guys know what that is, because NXT has dropped the ball for the last several weeks, and I'll tell you why I say that. And I will tell you what I did like that they did this week. And they have to remember what is the most special thing about NXT. They tapped back into it this week. They have to remember that, because what I've been seeing the last several weeks, it's actually turned BC off. And we'll talk AEW. There was one huge thing that you can never do again that I saw on AEW Dynamite this week from Mexico. One thing I never want to see again from any company. That should not be happening. I'll tell you what that is. And one thing that I absolutely loved that it seems the pro wrestling world is furious about. But at least it took the smoke and the steam off of Mox and everybody being pissed off about Mox holding the title for so long, holding the title hostage. But this new thing to complain about, man, has just the talk on AEW, just everybody is furious. And I think it is exceptional. Sadie's 6 belts. We'll talk about it, man. It's all coming up in this weekend, a wrap-up edition of Amped Up. So I guess I'm going to get the last swig here, and there's no way we're going through the rest of the show with no coffee. So I'm going to take one more swig. I'm going to take you guys to the opening signature, if you don't mind. Come right on back, and let's talk all these topics and a lot more. Hopefully I can get you in and out of here within about an hour-ish, give or take a few minutes. Sound good? So it's time to wake up, get up, and let's get amplified. BC in the unit. It's the weekend wrap-up. More acceptable shout out to the Joffrey's Coffee Company down in Orlando, I believe. If you guys ever come across a Joffrey's Coffee, get it. You will not regret it. You'll want to walk out with 20 boxes. Good old Joffrey's. All right, let's start off with Vinnie Mac, Vincent Kennedy McMahon coming back to pro wrestling. I know, I hear all the moans. I will rip the Band-Aid off. Make this as least painful as possible, but it has to be discussed. Vince McMahon is coming back, guys. He's got this new company, right? We just talked about this last week. He has this new company, big juggernaut, entertainment juggernaut, promotion, marketing, you name it. He's already trying to cut a deal with bare knuckle fighting. If you don't think that pro wrestling, he wants to situate that under this umbrella of sports and entertainment, you got another thing coming, man. Because by the end of this year, I truly believe we are going to hear Vince McMahon is officially back in the pro wrestling game. That's why we talked about it last week, because everything I'm seeing with this new company that he has, TNA, and every move that TNA's been making, the decisions behind the scenes, the firings, the new management, this business they're doing with the WWE, which is clearly not helping them. We thought just being mentioned by WWE will be enough, but it's not. It's not improving the numbers. Their big stars are just being beaten all the time left and right. Their own championship, their own title, the TNA title, isn't even there anymore. It's in NXT. And if you think that Trick Williams is just taking on TNA wrestlers at least, no. I think it's this Tuesday, I believe, correct? Or coming up, he has a title match for the TNA title against another NXT guy. No joke. So this deal is clearly helping but only one side. So Vince McMahon is starting this up. TNA's making all these decisions. We talked about it. Now you hear the new report. That's all what we are seeing, what we are hearing from the outside. What about the inside, within the walls of Endeavor Silver Lake? The latest report stating that those within TKO fully expect Vince McMahon back in the pro wrestling game. Those within the walls of TKO. Not just WWE, TKO. We're bringing in those top officials from the UFC. Everybody, the suits and ties, fully expect Vince McMahon back in the pro wrestling game. Of course, we've been saying this because we're using logic and common sense. We're just putting all the facts together where they go. It's like a puzzle, right? And you put all the pieces on the table, and then you just start putting the pieces where they go. It's not that hard to see what's in fact, When they say this latest report, those within TKO firmly believe Vince is coming back to pro wrestling, make no mistake, the top honchos have been a part of this from day one, Vince coming back. Ari Emanuel, Nick Khan, obviously the son-in-law, Helmsley. This has been a part of the plan all along for them to have Vince slowly integrate back in. And I firmly believe that TNA is that link for McMahon to come back. I believe TNA has positioned itself for a sale. That's why they don't care how WWE is booking their wrestlers or them in and of itself as a company. I don't think they care, because I think at the end of the day, they know that they're in a prime spot at any moment for WWE to say, all right, now we are officially going to do it. Let's make the sale. And those in charge of TNA will make a big, quick buck. And it's the perfect organization to be under the umbrella of what Vince has just began. It's not too big like a WWE where all the focus would be needed onto it. Something like TNA, while yes, it would need a lot of attention, it would allow Vince to do many other things as well within and under the umbrella of what he has created in this new company. Because I firmly believe he just doesn't want to do just pro wrestling. But there's no question that that's his wheelhouse. And that's exactly where he knows he can make the most money, more than the bare knuckle fighting, or if he wants to bring in some UFC style organization, which would directly either go against TKO or they would have some type of deal in place. Because don't forget, TKO, they have their hands washed with this. They can say, what are you talking about? Vince doesn't work for TKO. We have a relationship with the TNA. Vince bought TNA with this other investor or two. That's not us. We just have a working relationship. So TKO gets to have their cake and eat it too. This working relationship, but they don't have to take any baggage. I think this was all set up perfectly for Vince to get back in the game. And TKO has been helping him out from day one. And there's a lot of conflict of interest because Vince still has shares within TKO. So that's a lot of paperwork, I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. That would have to go through some type of litigation, I would think. The only other option, because he's coming back into the pro wrestling game. TNA, I believe, is the only way he can do that. He's not coming back to WWE up front. I don't see how that's possible. Unless, and this is the only other option, he joins Saudi Arabia. I believe within the next 2 years, WWE is going to be sold fully to Saudi. Saudi and Vince get along huge. The leaders, the top honchos over in Saudi, and Vince McMahon are like this. I honestly believe they would love to have Vince on board, and Vince would love it. So if it's not TNA, Vince could absolutely own WWE again with Saudi. But unless Saudi is involved, there's no way Vince is solely coming back to the WWE branch. That ship has sailed. But if it's with Saudi in about 2 years, yes, I absolutely see that. But I think it's TNA. Everything I've been seeing and the timing of it, priming TNA to get to this position in this moment of time, and Vince starting his company and already getting the wheels in motion at this point in time. TNA, it's the perfect organization for Vince to have a part of his conglomerate new company. So the latest report, again, just a recap. Now those within the walls of TK are believing the same thing. The general feeling is that Vince is being primed for a comeback to pro wrestling. You should not be shocked if you follow this channel, because you didn't have to be within those walls to know that. You just had to use common sense and logic, put the fact pieces where they belong, and you would have come to that conclusion already. That's what we do on this channel. We don't have to wait. Common sense will take us to the destination we'd like to be at. Common sense and logic would tell us that Vince McMahon is back. Behind the scenes, he already is. Now we're just waiting on word of how exactly that comes to fruition. Interesting, man. And I want to add one more thing, because I know there's a lot of people, most of us agree, Helmsley just he's not a good booker. He's not a writer. He's not a creator. He's not. He had a couple of good years in NXT Black and Gold. That's because he had the right people around him. We already have talked about this to nauseum. The William Regals, it was Dusty Rhodes' NXT Black and Gold, actually. It was Dusty Rhodes' NXT with a mastermind like William Regal, 24/7 on the dime. The bill was footed nonstop by Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the father-in-law. And Helmsley just got to fly in once a week to Orlando and play Papa H. Give some approvals. That was that. And that lasted a couple of years, and then boom, man. Once he started getting beat by AEW, he was like, all right, I'm out now, man. I'm done. Sean, get in here. I'm out, man. And he tapped out to Tony Khan. But I mean, for everybody that was like, that's like, oh, Tony Khan, man, he's just using his father's money, and that's the only way he's got a promotion. Well, where was that energy for Helmsley? He was literally sleeping on the dime of his father-in-law. That's even worse. That's not even his father. That's his father-in-law. His father-in-law footed a complete organization, footed the bill for the complete organization every single day. Till this very freaking day. NXT doesn't make a dime for that company. Not even with their new TV deal. When it's all said and done, I would absolutely believe that NXT probably loses them money. But Helmsley had an entire organization given to him. But even if that's it. That's all I would give. Like those couple of years were, okay, and then when things got rough, that was Helmsley, man. He's not a good creator. He's not a good writer. He's not a good booker. He's just one of the boys. He's a wrestler. He's just a wrestler. Don't give the booking pen. Don't give the magic pen to just one of the boys. That's an old school mantra. Everybody knows that. You don't give the book to Hulk Hogan. You don't give the book to Kevin Nash. You don't give the book to Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Petty Paul is what they called him. You thought Vince played to his favorites and kicked to the curbs those he doesn't like. Man, the career of Helmsley has been nothing but playing to his favorites and absolutely crushing the careers of the people he didn't like. And that's when he didn't have power. That's when he just had Vince in his pocket, or he was in Vince's pocket, or up Vince's ass. That's saying something. So imagine Helmsley with power. But you see these shows, and you don't need BC to tell you that, because look at the ratings and the numbers, and everything's backwards, man. You know, they talk about record revenue all the time, but where is that coming from? That was stemming off of the big sale and the transition. So for that first year, yeah, it was like, whoa, and they're going to all these different countries, which is even more money. They raised the ticket prices 10 times in most arenas. Ticketmaster, 8 to 10 times the ticket prices from just 2 to 3 years ago. Going to different countries for your PLEs. Of course you're making record revenue. You're liquidating the business. That can't substantiate itself. That can't possibly keep going for years the way you're running that business model. So they liquidated for a year and a half, and they made record revenue, and everybody's like, whoa, it's because of Helmsley. No, it's because of what Vince did for 50 years almost and sold it. And because of that name recognition and because of everything that Vince did for that company and with that company, now they get to pimp it out. And so they pimped it out. And what are you seeing this year? Numbers are going backwards. They're not talking about record revenue anymore, right? Unless they pull Mania from its location and bring it right back to Vegas, because that's the only way they knew they had any chance to get decent numbers again and try to talk about record revenue, because they knew they weren't getting that in New Orleans, because they couldn't even sell out Vegas and they had to put the ticket prices at 13 times. These are facts. That's why these decisions are being made. It's not like it was last year. And those suits and ties, they're going through the numbers and they're like, oh man, that ain't good. Yeah, it's not booming anymore. Helmsley is not a good booker and creator. You guys know that. You watch the shows. It's bad. But my whole point in all this, in talking about Vince, is some people are just like, oh, we need Vince back. Vince has to come back because Helmsley is so bad. You got to remember, Vince was really bad too. This is just a different type of bad. This is more confusing. There is no symmetry. There's no faces and heels that you can follow in any logical way. Right? Helmsley is just heel versus heel, face versus face. Just try to make noise. What are you doing, man? You got to have face versus heels. That's Pro Wrestling 101. This whole thing doesn't even work if you're not going to do heroes and villains and faces and heels. Helmsley doesn't want to do that. And then he wonders why nobody knows how to feel about a Braun Breaker, because every week he's something different. Or you put a bad heel group together, but everyone's still singing their song and they don't even have a name. And you don't know if you should be booing Breaker or bark with him, because that's how you're booking him. You're booking him for everyone to bark. But then you want them to boo him when he beats up Jey Uso or something. It doesn't... Huh? And that's with so many characters. So it's just a different type of bad. Vince was bad, though. You can't forget that. Bringing Vince back to run WWE, what is that going to do? Nothing. Vince got really bad the last 10 years, I would say. The last 5 for sure. And now we know he was just banging paralegals in the office instead of paying attention to his product. But Helmsley is a different type of bad. He's not banging paralegals more than likely, but what he is doing all the podcasts and the commercials and the voiceovers and hanging out with celebrities and going to Pacer games. And that's all Helmsley does with his time. He doesn't just lock himself in the office for 25 hours out of the 24-hour day. Do the math. Tap into your Steiner math. But that's what this product needs right now. It needs a pulse. It needs a lifeline. What it needs is Helmsley to trap himself in the office as the chief of content, the head of creative and talent, and he needs to just dedicate everything to this product. Start to really get the game plan going and all the creative. Tell Stephanie and the kids, listen, it's going to be a few days. I have to do this. Stephanie will understand. That's what Vince did. For years and years, Vince was made sure he would sleep in that office if he needed to. Vince did not want to do talk shows. Vince didn't want to do commercials. Vince didn't want to do voiceovers. Vince didn't want to do all of that. There was times where he knew he had to, but he didn't enjoy that. He didn't like it. Helmsley, he loves playing the role of Vince McMahon. He just doesn't want to do Vince McMahon shit. But just bringing Vince back is not the answer. Vince lost that touch. I don't know when he comes back and say he gets TNA. I don't know if that magic can be found again, but I don't want to take that gamble with the WWE. At this point, I'll keep saying what I've said from day one a million times. I'll probably say it a million times more. No McMahon should be in charge of creative for WWE right now. Shane McMahon would be the only one, but he doesn't want to do that. But he'd be the only acceptable version. Not even Stephanie. And yes, Paul Levesque is a McMahon. Whether by name or not, he's absolutely a McMahon. Vince is not the answer. Helmsley is clearly not the answer. They need to just, if you want Helmsley, if Vince wants to hire Helmsley for head of TNA, when Vince buys TNA, that's fine. WWE needs somebody completely different. And definitely not one of the boys. And especially not somebody as petty as Paul Levesque McMahon. Anyway, long discussion on that, I know. It was supposed to be shorter, but there's so much that goes into it, man. There's so many intricacies that kind of need to be brought to the forefront and discussed. So it's interesting. But yes, now those within the walls of WWE TKO, they're now feeling the same way. Vince is positioning himself for a return. So you heard it here first anyway a week or two ago, so you shouldn't be shocked. But now you're just starting to see that even those within the walls, they're starting to see it too. Move on to Liv Morgan, man. This is just crushing. Again, all of the momentum that Liv Morgan has had recently Beginning Raw, again, that A1 segment, the very first segment of a show, just as important as the main event. WWE trusted Liv Morgan with that coveted spot this past Monday. Morgan and Io setting up a world title match between the two for the Women's Championship. And then, of course, that big Evolution Tag Team title match with the Bella Twins that was set up last week with Nikki Bella. It's just Liv Morgan had so much momentum. And she was involved in so much, so many title segments. Again, Nikki last week, Io this week. It's wild to think. And then, damn, snap of a finger, blink of an eye. Injury takes her out, puts her on the shelf. Best case scenario, 4 to 6 weeks, meaning she was going to miss Evolution no matter what. Worst case scenario, if it's severe, and even if she needs surgery especially, she's out 6 to 8 months bare minimum. And guys, that's what happened. It's unfortunate to say that, but from what we are hearing is it was a severe dislocation and also surgery was required. So you're looking at 6 to 8 months up front. So now you're not talking about just missing Evolution or Night of Champions or some match with Io for the title, because Io won't have that title when Liv comes back, I assure you. Because now you're talking missing SummerSlam. You're talking missing Survivor Series. Most likely they're going to keep her off of anything at the end of the year. For the holidays and all of that, they're probably going to keep Liv for a Royal Rumble entry return. So you're probably not going to see Morgan until 2026. 6 to 8 months after surgery and this type of an injury and this dislocation. So even if it's so you put it in the middle, 6 to 8 months, say 7 months, right in the middle. Okay, so you have July, August, September, October, November, December. So that'd be January anyway. So even if you want to say 6 months, say 5 to 6 months, November, December, you're not bringing her back, throw her in Survivor Series maybe on 1 week of notice. I don't see it. You're not bringing her back in December when they all go on hiatus for a week or two. You're most likely going to see Liv now at the Rumble 2026. So it's just, it's amazing, this industry, right? That somebody can be riding so damn high like Liv Morgan and having all these opportunities, all these segments, all these title situations, and then boom, she's just on the shelf. And we're talking about that's it for Liv until 2026. Wild. We wish her the best, obviously. Speedy recovery, but not too speedy. I always say that. Make sure you got all your ducks in a row and everything is where it should be. Your shoulder is where it should be. And it's planted there pretty solid so that doesn't happen again. And again, I know some people are trying to blame Kari and all that. I just don't see it. That was a regular takedown. It was just it's one of those things where the old saying, it's not ballet. Kari did a takedown beautifully. And Liv Morgan took that beautifully, I feel. She just landed on her. It happens. I say all the time, I snapped my elbow in football one time just on the land. I just stuck my arm out for a landing, and it just boom, the other way. Snapped it so badly that it didn't just dislocate, it fractured the arm as well. Snapped a piece of the bone right off. It was good. Oh, that was a fun one. It happens. It happens, man. And that's, just one of those freak accident type things. But nobody at fault there. It's just because the injury happened right after Zoe Stark and Kari's situation, where Kyrie was on the other side of the ring. Zoe went to do that flying missile drop kick springboard and snapped her leg back. And people like to say that Kari wasn't in position. Well, probably not in the perfect position, but what people don't understand is Zoe has hit that many times in the past. The whole point of that move was to be far away. That's the whole point. It's a springboard missile, and Zoe wants you to see the distance that she gets. It would have been much better if Kari was at least turned around a second sooner. But Zoe could have held off just one more. There was no reason to rush that. But she was going for the distance anyway. I don't know, man. Both of them, there's no way that you can just throw Kari under the bus. But I know once you start racking up, once there's so many injuries and you're the common denominator, I know a lot of people kind of, it becomes its own thing, but it's not like a Nia Jax situation, which still befuddles me because there was like 10 injuries from Nia Jax, and she did an interview once and she goes, I don't understand though, because I really technically only injured 2 people. But that's not the case, because a couple of individuals she actually injured twice apiece, right? And Kari was one of them. Kari had 2 injuries from Nia. So that's 2 in just one individual. Forget the Zelina Vegas, the Asukas, and all the others. Interesting. Anyway, we wish all the best to Liv Morgan. And for Kari, man, play into that character. If I'm WWE and I know people are pissed, play into that. Kill a Kari. This little 5'1", $115, $120 little female wrestler, man. But she's like a force field, and everybody that tries to touch her gets zapped, and they go down. Liv Morgan 2026 is what it's looking like. I want to talk a little bit of AEW NXT from this week. So I want to start with NXT, if you don't mind. NXT, you guys know, if you follow the channel continuously, I've been really down on NXT recently. I feel there's too many, they're just dabbing in too much. I don't know half of who's even on the TV anymore, because you have to follow everything else outside of NXT. We shouldn't have to do that. It looks like a high school. These people are getting too young now. They're plucking from LFG, which is a television show. And I guess it's like a Tough Enough or something. 2 people won it. They won this show, and now they're on NXT beating people left and right. Like now they're just superstars. And then they're grabbing from Evolve, which is another show, I guess. I don't know where I wouldn't even try to find it. Evolve. Maybe it's even good wrestling, I'm sure. They're plucking individuals from Evolve with LFG. They're plucking from TNA, obviously. And it's just all at once. And they have this group with Ethan Page. I don't know if I'm watching like a professional wrestling show on primetime, or is this junior high school? LFG, like I said, these people are coming in and now getting TV time and beating people. And I'm like, come on, man. Just because you won a show does not mean you're primed for prime time. They lost what made it special, and I really feel that within the last year, NXT was making a really solid comeback, and it was on the foundation, the backs of their women's division. So with all that I've been down on with NXT recently, I've really liked what I saw this past Tuesday when they circled it all around the female division and the Evolution Eliminator matchups. There was like 4 women's matchups throughout the night, and you come up with 4 winners, and they're all going to be in a fatal 4-way, I believe, this upcoming Tuesday. The winner of that will then take on your champion. I think it's the North American champion, correct? So I think this is all to get to the North American championship, not the actual women's championship. I think is that how it... I'm going to say that's how it is. I didn't even care. I was just happy to see 4 women's matchups, because NXT has one of the best women's divisions you'll ever come across. From Soruka, Jada Parker, Lola. Obviously, they just lost. I mean, look at who they just lost. Stephanie, Julia, Roxy. But you still have Jordan Grace and Kalani Jordan. And I mean, this division is stacked. And to see a Tuesday night where they put the focus back on that, it was just really good to see. Evolution Eliminators. Again, 4 matchups. Each winner will now participate in a Fatal 4 next week. The winner of that will then go on to, I believe, it's the North American Championship. If I'm wrong and it's the World, then that's what it is. Either way, I'll be watching, because I love their women's division. And it's almost like every match is involving like really good talent. That's the women in NXT. So that is what I'll discuss for this show, because everything else, completely missable. Even one of their best stories in recent months, it's fallen off. It's done. Tony D and Stacks, and And that whole situation, man, if you saw it this past Tuesday, it was so mid. And Stax is coming out with, I don't even know these individuals. I don't. He's got this group, and I'm like, stop. Now we just have 100 people out there that nobody knows who they are. So, no, I'm not going to talk about anything else but in the Trick Williams. They're just setting up. Trick Williams, the TNA champion, got pinned. Inamura, I believe, pinned him this past Tuesday. And now they're setting up Trick Williams versus, who is it, Josh Briggs or something? Williams versus another NXT talent for the TNA championship. You want me to say that again? Trick Williams, your NXT talent who currently owns the TNA championship. He's taking on another NXT individual next week for the TNA title, because that benefits TNA. So no, I'm not going to talk about anything like that in any great length or give you any positive comments, because there is none. But the ladies, these Evolution Eliminators, let me just run through these real quick. The first one, Jada Parker defeated Thea Hale via pinfall. Creative finish as Hale felt Parker tapped out. But the ref was like, what are you celebrating? I saw nothing. Because Jada tapped out from the right side. The ref was on the left, so Thea starts celebrating. But the ref's like, what are you doing? Parker then comes flying in with that big old ass. And she's got the assets. If you know Jada Parker and you've seen Jada, you know if that ass hits you, it's like a ton of bricks. So Thea just falls like she got hit by a ton of bricks. Ass right to Hale's dome piece. 1, 2, 3. Jada Parker picks up that W. Jada will move on. Lash Legend then defeated Kalani Jordan. Straight up clean 1, 2, 3 pinfall. Much respect to Legend. She's gotten so much better than where she started. But Kalani losing that clean? No, I'm not buying it. Kalani's incredible, not to mention a former North American champion. The loss to Sol Ruca back in May at Battleground, that I'm okay with. I mean, it's Sol Ruca. Ruca is half human, half airplane. But I just don't want to see Jordan job out to the entire roster just because she dropped her title. And that's what's happened. Since she has lost that North American title, Kalani is lost in the shuffle, to say the least. And I feel that she's losing not just big matches like Sol Ruca at Battleground, but even matches like this to Lash Legend. Again, respect to Legend. She has improved so much. But a W this clean to Kalani, it just doesn't seem or feel right. So I was against that for sure. Izzy Dane defeated Zarya via pinfall. Questionable, but all right. Zarya, man, when she first debuted, we thought, we knew that Jordan was coming over. They're going to bump Zarya up to be big, and they're going to set up a big Jordan Zarya. Zarya, she's basically no better than what Piper Niven is to Chelsea Green on the main roster. Jordan Grace then defeated Lola Vice. That's a good one, right? Jordan Lola. And it was actually good, too. Good matchup. Via Beast Mode pinfall. Lola up for Beast Mode. Pretty badass. And Jordan Grace took that. So you're setting up Jada Parker, Lash Legend, Izzy Dane, Jordan Grace for that fatal 4-way. It's going to be interesting to see how that develops. And if I may just stick with the women here, because that was the focal point of this Tuesday night NXT, Mariah May, Blake Monroe, signed her NXT contract. Influence that's fatal put her through the table, and that's how the show ended. Very weak. Very, very weak, man. They spent the whole 2 hours bulking up this big contract signing. Fatal Influence just puts her through the table. We say goodnight. Could we have gone a little bit better with that? Of course we could have. I thought for a second, because Ava was out there, and Ava has this thing with Fatal Influence, like she's losing patience with them, and Fatal Influence is always throwing these jabs at Ava. I thought for a second Ava might finally get physical and might do something and maybe help Mariah or Blake Monroe. That didn't happen. Very interesting to see. I know she was training to be a wrestler. It wasn't going that well. So then Rock talked to WWE and the powers that be and said, hey, maybe it's a better fit if we make her GM. And she's gotten so much better from those first couple of months. But it leads to the question, is that just what she's going to do now? Have they given up on the wrestling thing? Because I still think there's a presence there. I hope that Ava's been training this whole time, or if she hasn't, begins to. I still think there's something to tap into with Ava as a wrestler. She doesn't have to be one of the best technicians. She doesn't have to be an aerial assaultist. Some of the best wrestlers in memory are dudes like Hulk Hogan, who threw punches, leg drops, and body slams. Warrior, who did who knows what. You don't have to do too much. Just you have to have that presence first and foremost. So I don't know, man. I want to see more out of Ava than just GM. I think they played it way too safe. I think there's a lot more she can do, a lot more potential. She doesn't have to put on five-star classics. AEW Dynamite. For this week, one thing I really liked, I'll get to that in a minute. Many things I absolutely despise in pro wrestling, period, no matter the company. Multi-man schmaz matches. AEW Dynamite had one of those weeks where they just had one multi-man match after another. And I'm not just talking like Fatal 4-Ways, which they had that. I'm not even talking about just a 10-man tag, which they had. I'm talking about a 14-man tag match. On the same card that they had the Fatal 4-Way and a 10-man tag. As if that's not bad enough, watching 10 wrestlers in one match. Unless this is like a Survivor Series and there's really a lot of a substance involved into it. There's value into it. Or a good War Games match or build to a War Games or a Survivor Series. Something like that. Okay, have at it. 10 dudes, one ring, whatever. But a 14-man tag match on top of that. I can't even fathom the thinking or the logic that would have went into this, other than you're in Mexico and you just want Mexico to see all these wrestlers and you only have a few hours to do it. We call that filler. That's way too many wrestlers, not a lot of time. Let's stuff everybody out there. I've seen WWE do this for years. They continue to do it. I didn't need to see that on a Wednesday night, I assure you. Good wrestling? Of course. I guess. If you want to see 14 wrestlers in one match for 15 or 20 minutes, all right. If that's your cup of coffee. But if you want to say you saw great wrestling or even good wrestling on Wednesday, that's fine. I see good wrestling on most of these shows. Go to the local bingo hall. You're probably going to get really great wrestling. These shows have to be about way more than that. There's nothing of substance I can even tell you. Other than Mercedes Mone, who you can now call Sadie's 6 belts. I think she's up to 6. My Steiner math's all over it. Could be 5, could be 7 or 8. I'll say 6. Sadie's 6. She had so many titles by the end of Dynamite because she just won the CMLL championship as well on Wednesday night. Another new title. There were so many titles, she was dropping them. She couldn't hold them all. So referee Edwards had to put one around her waist, which it took this referee about 105 years approximately to put the title around her waist. By then, Toni Storm was already out there. You're just putting a title on. Can you comprehend that? Aubrey. That was rough. But she's dropping titles. That's how many she now holds. Mercedes Mone has all the championships, and that has a lot of fans furious. A lot of fans were already upset that Mox is holding the title for so long, which I have no problem with at all. It's going to be a monumental moment when he does lose it. But this isn't a Roman Reigns 3-year situation. But a lot of people are they just don't like Mox, or they don't think he's entertaining or whatever, so they just don't want to see him with the championship. But if you think that that's what's bringing AEW down, absolutely not. If the company is being brought down by one person and one title, that's a bigger issue in and of itself. Like if WWE's one and sole main issue was just Jey Uso holding a title, that'd be a problem. Because that was a big issue, but it's not the issue. Mox holding a championship, the world title, is not the issue, but a lot of fans have made that. That's the battle that that's the hill that everybody's willing to die on, the Mox hill. But now AEW threw a curveball, and they're like, we're going to give you another hill to choose from because Mercedes 6 belts has arrived. You were already upset that she was running through the roster. You were already upset that she held 65 championships. We're going to keep adding. I love it, just like the Mox thing. I love it. You have to build these spectacles for people to care. And it has to be believable, right? Bubba Dudley, he says a lot of stupid things, but one of the just dumbest things was about a month or two ago, maybe it was going into Mania, I forgot. But it was recent. And Bubba said, just put all the titles on Charlie Flair. If they're going to boo her anyway, make her a mega heel, put all the titles on her, all of them. Basically what they're doing with Mercedes, but do that for Charlie. What people don't understand, though, is that Charlie Flair, there was just never a connection. People don't understand why Charlie has 14 titles. She's decent to good, yes. She does natural selection. She does a moonsault that never touches anybody, but it's a moonsault. And she does a figure eight leg lock. Throws some chops. Hates to sell. Cannot stand it. That's why I said a few years back when she was taking on Nia, we did a preview for Raw when we knew that match was happening. I said, watch this match, guys. It's going to be fun because both don't like to sell. Nia and Charlie. They've gotten better, both of them, by the way. Charlie today and Nia today, much different. I think they've had enough talking to. But they hated to sell for the longest of times. And still to this day, Charlie just doesn't like it. But there's a lot of, there's a lot of holes in the game as well. It's not just all hunky-dory for Charlie Flair. But she's a good wrestler. Not 14 times. Not when you see somebody like Naomi only have 2 championships to Charlie's 14. You're not telling me Charlie is that much better than Naomi, if even. If even. So you want to just throw all the titles on her because people boo her. But people just literally don't want to see her on the TV. That's the thing. A lot of people are not showing up to see Charles Flair. That's the problem. With Mercedes and Sasha Banks, we actually knew that's one of the best wrestlers on the planet. Even if you don't like her, that was a fact, right? I say this all the time because she's a common denominator to most individuals' best match that she faces. Whether it's Ember Moon or Athena, an Io Sky, an Asuka, Charlie Flair many times, Bayley many times, Bianca Belair, Becky Lynch many times. They all have one thing in common. One of, if not their best match, was with Sasha Banks. Their best. Even if they had maybe one or two other, okay, but Sasha's right there. They can always point to Sasha Banks was my best match. That's what they all have in common. Not too many people you can say that about, right? Shawn Michaels would be the only other one, I believe. Or like Undertaker, Kurt Angle. So many others would tell you Shawn Michaels was their best match. Bret Hart, whatever. Mercedes, Sasha is that person, right? Even if you don't like her, and there's a lot of people that don't for whatever reason, that's fine. Maybe she's too cocky, too arrogant. You don't think she's as good as everybody claims. But the facts tell you she is because every time she wrestles, that wrestler, her opponent, turns around and says, that was my best match. That's a common denominator. So whether you like Mercedes or not, that's fine. That's your prerogative. She's the best. So her collecting all the titles and winning all the matches and beating everybody would make sense because she's the best. It's simple. I said in WWE, that's how you have to book her because she's the best. They just never wanted to. They didn't want it. It was like pulling teeth just to get one title on Sasha Banks. So yeah, the fact that she's collecting titles and picking up W after W, that's more than realistic. And if it's pissing off a lot of people in the process, even better. Because at least it's realistic. And it's going to be a damn great moment when she gets beat by somebody like a Toni Storm or whoever they choose in the future. You'll love that moment. So no. If you think we're going to cry on this channel that Mercedes is beating her, and look at who she's beating. She's not running through the roster as you could. First of all, look at the roster and realistically, who's beating her? Everybody threw a fit because Mercedes beat Jamie Hayter. Much respect to Jamie Hayter. Hayter's not beating Banks, Mercedes. Stop. if Mercedes beat Toni Storm and collected another title? It's beyond realistic. But maybe it's because of the creative is not quite there for her. But who is it for? If you're not Toni Storm, who is the creative really booking properly in any company? Maybe it's because people just don't like the personality. And maybe they know too much off-screen personality-wise, and they don't like that. I don't know. Maybe there's a plethora of reasons why people don't like Banks, Mercedes Moné, but she still is one of, if not the best professional wrestler for the ladies. She just is. You saw it again on Wednesday night with another solid match like she had. Yeah, it's more than believable she'd be picking up titles. So what's the alternative? You want her losing some of these matches? You don't want her with all these titles? And you want her just to be another spoke on the wheel, but when you know factually she's better than that? Guys, this isn't about what we like and what we don't. BC, I just can't stand Mercedes. She's not that good. That's your prerogative. That's your belief. That's fine. Much respect. Factually, that's not a correct answer. Factually, you'd be wrong. You don't like her, that's fine. She's actually the best. She's everybody's best match. Bare minimum, one of. You can't say that about anybody else. Everybody's not turning around that faces Jamie Hayter and says Jamie's my best match, or even Toni Storm, or a Britt Baker, or even an Asuka, a Kari, a Liv Morgan, or a Ripley, a Charlie Flair, a Nia, a Tiffany. Nobody's saying that. So guys, on this channel, we just have to speak in facts. If you think we're going to cry here on this channel because somebody has all the titles and is collecting W's and they're setting up for a really big L in the future, that's how it should be done. So that's what I want to spend time on. Sadie's 6 belts, making the industry furious. I love every second of it. This is exactly how you book Mercedes Moné. Whether people like it or not, she's that damn good. And that's how you would believe somebody of that talent. That's how you believe they'd be booked. Beating people and collecting titles. Yup. More than okay with it. Ratings real quick, because we already went over the allotted time, man. I know, man. Ratings real quick. NXT this week scored 660K, down from 726 last week. That's a 66,000 viewer drop. Shows you that when BC talks about NXT, I'm speaking as a microcosm of the grander scheme of it all. I'm speaking really for the masses. People are not happy with this NXT product, and they lost 66,000 viewers back to 660. They got to get back on track. Now you say, well, BC, but this week had all the female. Yes, but the last couple of weeks, they were falling off. So people said, yeah, I don't have to tune in this week. Was this enough to get them back for next week, hearing about this show? Do they care about the women's division anymore because everything else has fallen off? I don't know. But because the last several weeks made even people like BC go, this ain't it. This is how you pull 660. AEW, there is no number yet as of this recording. So that's why there's an asterisk. We're still waiting on Dynamite, but they've been close. They've been close to NXT the past several months. Tony Khan says they have gained substantial viewership. This caused some outrage in the community. What are you talking about? You can't even beat NXT most weeks. But I think he is including max numbers, which is another 40 to 60K a week. So if you add that, maybe but he says they're year to year up. That's not week to week though. So that's not entirely accurate, but he is adding in the max numbers. But they have been matching NXT, or at least in the same ballpark. SmackDown scored a 1-4. That's the same basically as last week, and the week before, I believe, was a 1-3 sem-odd. So they're struggling mightily. But it's Raw that's struggling the most, dropping from 3-0 to 2-9 to 2-8 to 2-7 and eventually 2-6 within the last 2 weeks. Maybe 2-6, 2-7 was last week. This past number, and again, they're 7 days behind, guys. It's a 7-day. They're always backlogged 7 days because they count a full week of numbers, not just one night. So Netflix is a week behind. So these numbers are for the post Money in the Bank Raw, where Jey Uso lost his title to Gunther. That number of 2.9 up from 2.7. Yes, it's the post Money in the Bank edition of Raw, which is going to give a little bit of an uptick. But I gotta believe 50,000 to 100,000 of those viewers tuned in to watch Jason Uso lose that title finally. I think a lot of people knew that Goldberg was coming in. Is that going to be a factor in Jay losing the title? Seth Rollins cashing in was a big rumor, a big heated discussion. So a lot of people pretty much said, you know what? Jey Uso's probably losing that title. And I got to believe that that was a big uptick as well. So 2.9. And that goes to show you that people wanted to see Jason Uso do one thing, drop that title. Because look at all of the weeks where Jey Uso has been the champion. 3-0, 2-9, 2-8. It's been a falling rock off the cliff. And the 1 week where we've been hearing, oh, he's going to lose his title, it's just about how. That's when you saw a bit of an uptick. Interesting, right? They tuned in to see Uso drop that title. That's not good for the Jey Uso experiment. Guys, that's amped up the weekend wrap-up edition on this Friday. Until next time, and there will be that next time. BC and the unit, we're saying check you. Saloon!